Good afternoon, I'm Meteorologist Pete Mangione. Happy Valentine's Day. What better to spend Valentine's Day than tracking some snow, right? Let's get you right to the graphics. We've already seen some light snow this morning. Notice on our satellite picture, the bark is a little bit worse than the bite. What I mean is that we do have some snow showers pushing through Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts showing up here, but not all of that is actually hitting the ground as snow, and this is not the main part of our storm. Now, just to see if any of these snowflakes were actually hitting the ground, I went to the time-lapse camera at the WPRI campus in Kingston, Rhode Island, because you know what they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So let's check what happened earlier this afternoon, or actually late this morning here in Kingston, and you can see a few snowflakes, very light snowflakes at that showing up on the camera. So yes, we are getting some light snow showers in the area. That light snow continues off and on, but things really don't get going until later on this afternoon. This is around 2 o'clock. Notice the blue shows that the snow starts to fill in, and by 7 o'clock, I would not be surprised if a lot of our area has anywhere from a dusting to even 2 inches of snow on the ground, most of us probably a dusting to an inch, as all of our computer models have been very consistent with this first dump of snow. Now, I should point out that we're not going to see really strong winds this afternoon or even this evening. We could see some gusts around 30 miles an hour, but in terms of those really strong winds, potentially damaging winds, that will hold off until later on tomorrow night. And I'll show you that in just a second. I also would not be surprised if right around 8 or 9 p.m., 10 p.m., we get a little bit of a lull in the snow, either very light or turning off altogether. But then as the storm starts to develop offshore and strengthen, you can see the snow starts to fill back in. So by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, we have the moderate to even heavy bands of snow pushing through. Notice out across the Cape Cod Canal, those dark stripes of blue. That could represent snowfall rates of 1, 2, even 3 inches an hour. Over Providence, you can also see some light to moderate and even heavy snow developing. As we go into the late morning, you can see what happens. We're still snowing at pretty decent rates from New Bedford up into places like Rehoboth, Boston. Providence could also still be seeing some moderate to even heavy bands of snow at this time. But notice how there's a very steep drop-off off into western Rhode Island. You could be turning off your snow by this point in places like Foster, Gloucester, even down into Westerly. And then everybody turns off the snow by later on in the afternoon. But the winds will get the wind chills will get very, very cold, and the wind speeds will be brutal. Could still see some gusts between 30 and 50 miles an hour with wind chills well below zero. So that's something to keep in mind as you're removing that snow tomorrow. You're going to want gloves, hat, the whole 9 yards, because it's going to be brutal out there when you're trying to clear out the snow. So here's an updated snowfall map. No major changes from last night. You can see 3 to 6 inches, slightly lower amounts in extreme southwestern Rhode Island towards westerly. 6 to 10 for most of our viewing area. Now I have this 10 to 15 inch swath, including New Bedford, Bristol County, Massachusetts, so I do have you in it for South Attleboro, North Attleboro, Attleboro, and even into places like Rehoboth. I think most of us will probably get closer to this 10-inch amount at the lower end of the range, but I think somewhere in here a few heavy bands will set up, so maybe it could be towards the Boston area, even closer down to the south coast of Massachusetts, where we could see that heavier strip of snow exceeding 1 foot, and we could definitely exceed a foot up near the Boston metro area. So again, this 10 to 15 is a very wide range. I think most of us will be closer to this 10-inch amount, and we'll keep you updated. Also notice how close Providence is to this heavier stuff. I'm keeping you in the capital city in the 6 to 10-inch zone for now, but stay tuned. TJ is in with updates this afternoon. He'll have any changes to this forecast. We'll see if this boundary between the moderate and heavy snow has to move with the later forecast. But needless to say, enough snow where most of us will be shoveling, albeit it will be a dry and fluffy snow, so at least it won't be the heavy, wet cement. Now, here's our timeline. Again, by 7 p.m., most of our models pretty consistent with putting down maybe a dusting to an inch or two of snow by around 7 o'clock. By 11 p.m., 1 to 3 inches. And then you can see where the bulk of our accumulation is. I see it occurring well after midnight through the morning hours. So kind of right in here, we're going to pick up most of our snow in the capital city. You can see we go from about 2 to 4 at 3 o'clock in the morning, grand total on the ground, to 6 to 9 by around noontime. Our grand total is around 6 to 10. You can see once we get past the noon hour in Providence, we are pretty much done with the bulk of our accumulation. Here is New Bedford, same theme, but just different amounts. So I'm expecting slightly heavier amounts here in New Bedford. You'll be a little bit closer to the center of the storm. And notice I do have a few additional inches between noon and 3 p.m. That's because as that storm wraps around, you will likely get hit with the backside of that storm here in New Bedford, creating a few additional inches of snow. So we've talked about the snow. Let's talk wind now. And our wind speeds, they'll get gusty later on, but really not that bad. This is around 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. That's when the winds really start to crank up. In fact, anytime after midnight, you'll start to really feel those gusts pick up. As of Saturday evening, if you're out and about, you could see some winds 20 to 30 miles an hour for the gusts. But in terms of the damaging speeds, we start to approach those levels early on Sunday morning, not Saturday. So 6 o'clock Sunday morning, gusts between 35 and 40. Watch what happens as we go into the early afternoon of Sunday. Between 40 and 50 inland for places like Providence. Between 50 and 60 out across the south coast. So Newport, Block Island, New Bedford, you can see those wind speeds ranging between 51 and even 60 miles an hour. Cape Cod could exceed 60 miles an hour. Notice that wind speed in Provincetown around 64. I think that is not out of the question. I think likely power outages for Cape Cod. We'll have to watch the south coast of Massachusetts and Rhode Island closely. When you have wind speeds like this, obviously we get concerned with some of the power outages, but at least the snow is light and fluffy, so that's not going to weigh down the branches all that much. So I think inland we can try to escape without any widespread wind damage and power outages, but that is something we'll have to watch carefully. Certainly windy for all with the storm all the way through tomorrow morning through Sunday evening. Here's the 7-day Futurecast. Very cold weather on the way. Sunday night into Monday, temperatures dropping below zero. And yet another storm to keep an eye on Tuesday into Wednesday. That could bring a little bit more snow, even moderate amounts of snow possible. Kind of ran out of time to talk about that one, but we'll keep you updated on that midweek system. And TJ Del Santo, he is in later on tonight. Lucky for TJ, he'll have online updates and also be with you on the air all night long. Have a good afternoon.